biggest fear people have about retiring is running out of money. Because when you run out of money, you become a burden to children, a burden to friends, or a burden to whoever's supporting you. Now, the good news is there's a way to tell exactly when you are in a position to retire. And it is as simple as understanding 3 unique numbers for you. Once you know these numbers, you'll be in a position to retire comfortably, not have to worry about being a burden to children, and most importantly, have peace of mind as you transition into retirement. Now, when most people look at retiring and ask how much money do you need to be able to retire, they're looking at some arbitrary number. Maybe it's 12 times your salary. Maybe it's $1 million. Maybe it's some other arbitrary number, which is a good starting point, but it's not unique to you. If you want to know when you're in a position to retire, you need to know your 3 numbers, and I'm going to walk you through exactly how to find those. The first number, the first thing that you need to know before retiring is what are your expenses. So when you start with retiring, when people ask if they're in a position to retire, the first thing I want to know is what do you want retirement to look like? If you want to retire, you want that to be enjoyable, you want that to be fulfilling. So think about what is that going to look like at that time. Are you traveling? Are you joining the country club? Are you spending time with family? Are you volunteering? Really understand what does that ideal retirement look like for you. Because once you understand what the ideal retirement looks like, then you can start to go back and see how much is that going to cost. Now, there's 2 ways that you can approach living expenses so that you can find your number. One is what I like to call the bottom-up approach. The bottom-up approach is very precise, it's very detailed, and it's going to be very accurate. The bottom-up approach says if you want to know what your expenses are, get out a pad of paper, get an Excel sheet, get whatever it is that works for you, and literally start lining out your expenses that you're going to have in retirement. What is mortgage or rent going to be? Write out that number. What is groceries going to be? Write out that number. What's the cell phone bill going to be? What's the Netflix cost going to be? What's it going to cost to do the different things that you want to do? And you literally, line by line, go down every single expense to come up with a very accurate picture of the expenses you need to be able to fulfill your retirement goals. So that's the most accurate way of doing this. That's the way that's going to give you the most precise picture of what it's going to cost to fund your retirement, but it's also the most time consuming. If you like that approach, wonderful. But if you're saying, James, I just want to know a very quick, basic way to find out what my expenses are, here's an easier approach. I like to call this the top-down approach. The top-down approach says, look, what's your salary today? Your salary today is probably some gross number, but once that number has taxes taken out, maybe 401k taken out, maybe other deductions taken out, there's a much smaller number that actually hits your bank account each month. So the question is, what is that number? Because if you just want to maintain lifestyle in retirement, let's assume that as you think about your ideal retirement, maybe it's not too different than today. Maybe it's the exact same thing you're already doing, but you have income coming from somewhere else that's not a paycheck. Well, great. We just need to be able to replace what your paycheck is delivering to your bank account after taxes today. So let's say that number is $10,000 per month. Well, great. Let's start with $10,000 and say we need to replace that $10,000. But maybe you have a mortgage today. Maybe by the time that you actually retire, you're going to have that mortgage paid off. Well, if that mortgage is $2,000 per month, well, then we really don't need to replace the full $10,000 per month that's coming in. Really, we need to replace $8,000 because $2,000 is going to a mortgage that will no longer be there. Meaning, less income is coming in, but you're still able to do everything that you want to do. Let's also assume that you're saving $1,000 per month to retirement. Wonderful. That's another $1,000 per month if it's coming from your net paycheck that we can take out. So if 10,000 is coming in and 2,000 is going to the mortgage, we can reduce that. Another 1,000 is going to savings, we can reduce that. Really, that's $7,000 per month that you need to live on. That is actually your number. Now, what you do from there is say maybe your retirement doesn't look exactly like what living expenses look like today. Maybe you want to spend more on travel. You want another $1,000 a month to travel on average. Okay, we'll take that 7 and add another $1,000 per month. Maybe you want to join a country club. Maybe you have more giving or donations you want to be able to do. Really what you want to do is take a look at take-home income today, take out the expenses that are no longer going to be there in retirement, and add back in some other expenses. So that's a very basic way that you could do in 10 minutes to see what are your expenses going to look like at that point. So that's how you get your expenses. And keep in mind, you're not adding taxes at this point. This is just the expenses that you want to be able to live on after taxes. That's your first number, your after-tax expenses. The second number is your income. I'm not talking about salary, I'm talking about income in retirement, and I'm also not talking about any income from your investments. So really, this is income from things like Social Security. It's income from things like pension, maybe rental income. Really, any income sources that you're going to have in retirement that don't cause you to have to pull money from your investment account. So you need to know your income for this reason. We just looked at your expenses. And in this example, we're going to assume that your living expenses are $7,000 per month. And let's assume that you and your spouse are retiring and you'll just have Social Security. Maybe that's your only income source. And maybe you're both collecting $2,000 per month in Social Security. Well, what we know is if $7,000 is your expenses, $4,000 is your income, the difference between $7,000 and $4,000, that's the shortfall. That's the gap that we're going to get to with the third number. But really, the goal of income is understanding what income sources will you have when you no longer have a paycheck. And before you take any money from your portfolio, we want to know that. And more importantly, we want to know what that number is after taxes. Because if you're receiving a pension or you're receiving some other income source, that's going to be reduced by taxes. So what's the after-tax income that you'll receive? That is your second number. And the reason we start with this, your expenses of 7 in this example, your income of 4, now what we know is your gap. The gap here is 3. That allows us to solve for the third number, which is your portfolio or your savings amount. Any shortfall there, so $3,000 in this example, that needs to come right from your portfolio or right from your savings. So when we understand this, when we understand exactly what that shortfall is, we can work backwards to understand how much do you need to have in your portfolio to be able to support that. So how do we do that? There's a general rule of thumb, or there's a rule called the rule of 4%. And what the rule of 4% says is it says that if you have a portfolio when you retire, and if you want that portfolio to last for 30 plus years, generally speaking, and assuming you're invested the right way, you can take out about 4% per year of your portfolio and have that be sustainable, meaning not have an extreme risk of running out of money in retirement. So what we want to do is we say, okay, if $3,000 per month is what we still need, multiply that by 12, so 12 months in the year, that's $36,000. We need $36,000 per year. So what is 36,000 4% of? So if we divide this by 4% or multiply it by 25, the math works out to be the same thing in that case, what we get is $900,000. So $900,000 is the amount we need in our portfolio to be able to generate $3,000 per month, supplementing our Social Security benefit of $4,000 so that we can live on the $7,000 per month that we talked about. So as we look at that, keep in mind that $9,000, that $900,000, depending on what type of an account that is in, we don't know if that withdrawal or that the taxes on that are going to be tax-free or taxable. Say, for example, that $900,000 is all in a Roth IRA. Well, you can pull out $3,000 per month and it's completely tax-free. So that math checks out. But if that $900,000 is in a traditional IRA or a 401k, and let's say that, for example, maybe you're in the 25% tax bracket between federal and state taxes. Well, you might take $3,000 per month out, but after you pay taxes, you're not left with $3,000. I mean, there's still a shortfall between your income and your expenses. So what we first need to do is we need to understand what's the after-tax amount on that. Same thing that we did with the income sources. So let's assume now that you're in a 25% tax bracket and that $900,000 is in an IRA. Well, that's no longer enough to be your number to allow you to retire. Really, what we would want to do is we want to say, okay, if I need $3,000 per month, really that's $4,000 before taxes. So if I pay 25% in taxes, or $1,000 per month, now I have $3,000 per month after taxes. So if $4,000 per month or $48,000 per year is my actual number, and I divide that by 4%, what I actually get is a portfolio value of $1,250,000. So once I have a portfolio value of $1,250,000, now I can retire. Now I can generate $4,000 per month pre-tax, which is $3,000 per month after tax, supplement Social Security, and meet all my living expense needs. Now, there are other ways of doing this. This 4% rule is kind of a rule of thumb that's been used for a long time. There's actually methods that you can actually take more out of your portfolio and still have that be sustainable if you're doing the right things with your portfolio and using a more dynamic approach. But for simple exercise or just simple numbers for today, that's a good baseline amount that you can plan to take out. So at the end of the day, what we want to make sure that we're doing is we want to make sure that we know these numbers, because when you know these three numbers, what you can do is you can answer that question definitively of, are you in a position to retire? And what it starts with is understanding What are your expenses that would allow you to live your dream retirement? What are your income sources in retirement? And what does your portfolio value need to be to supplement that income? So I hope that was helpful. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to this video for more great content like this, and we'll see you next time.